Hello, everybody. We are live. This is Dr. Nelson Vasquez from Central Florida. It's 3 p.m. on the 30th of September. Thank you for being here. Let me know where you're watching from. And I'm still waiting for our guest, but while we wait, we'll basically say hello to people here. And if we don't get a guest, I actually have, oh, there we go. Ah, ah. Hello, Brian.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for being here. Uh, where are you coming from today? Where are
I'm
you?
from I'm in Austin.
Austin, Texas? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm in Central Florida, by the way, and we have people from several places here. We have Bruce and Cheryl and Granny Boo and many others that are watching, including people from Canada.
All
Thank
right.
you for being here. Okay, so are we here to talk about, by any chance, about a documentary?
Yeah, I've been making something called Food Lies for 8 years now.
Okay, okay. And what is your way of eating most of the time?
So I am animal-based whole foods. I call it Sapien. I think there's a lot of different names. People have different diets and they call them different things, and I think there's kind of like a way to not get caught up in a certain name, like a specific diet camp, because there's some good diets out there that, as long as you're eating mainly whole foods and are avoiding all the processed foods and eating animal foods as the healthiest source of protein and fat.
Very good. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and tell us about this content you've been creating for the past 8 years, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually a mechanical engineer originally. Uh, I was in tech for a while. I was just trying to find out what I was really interested in, and then along the way, I lost both my parents about 11 years ago. So it was around 30 years old, and pretty young to lose both your parents to chronic disease, because they just kind of follow the dietary guidelines. They were doing the food pyramid, and we were eating low fat foods and just grains and bread and avoiding red meat and just doing all that. And it just eventually caught up to them. I think that people do that and think they're doing the right thing, and then they don't realize that they're gaining a pound or two every year. And the next thing you know, you're 50, 60 years old and you're just overweight. You have all these conditions. They had a lot of undiagnosed metabolic problems, because I kind of looked back at their medical records later once I figured this stuff out, and they had kind of the high blood sugar and different signs of pre-diabetes, and no one told them, and they thought they were doing the right thing. And so I was also going down that path. I was 30 and I was kind of 20 something pounds overweight, just having all these little conditions, taking some of these over the counter medications. It's kind of on my way to taking all the different prescription medications and just going down that path of a lot of people. And then I started waking up. I learned more about processed foods and the problem with processed carbohydrates and the bad oils, and got rid of those, and my whole life changed. It was so easy. I just lost all this weight. My problems went away. I haven't been sick in probably 8 years. I just don't need doctors anymore. And I kind of wanted to tell the world about this. So I started making Food Lies, which started as a documentary and then turned into a 6-part series. So now we have episode 1 done, parts of 2 and 6 done. We're working with a production company. I've been around the world filming with doctors and scientists and regenerative ag farmers and ranchers. And I went to Africa and hunted with the Hadza and drank the blood and the milk with the Maasai, just learning about how all these other cultures live and eat and why they're so much healthier than us. So that's kind of the high level view.
Very good. Now, looking a little bit more on the, historical side, philosophical side, are we supposed to be getting sick like we are?
I don't think so. So I've been around the world, right? And I see these different cultures and people who live like humans are supposed to. And from what I've seen, they're not getting sick. Even they're not getting chronic disease, that's for sure. They're also not even getting sick just on a monthly basis. It's pretty interesting. We were with a lot of different tribes in Africa, and we were with a translator, and we asked them, do you have back pain? They're like, what are you talking about? Does your back hurt? Do your knees hurt?
What is that?
they had no idea what we were talking about. So we kept trying to ask them. And then finally they're like, oh yeah, once I fell out of a tree and my back hurt. And we're like, no. So other than that, they don't have the aches and pains. We were hunting with guys that were 60. There's a guy who's in his 70s that was running up hills with us, hiking with us, with the Maasai. And so these people just don't get the same things as us at all. They don't have the chronic disease. I mean, they die of different things, right? They have maybe different infections or different accidents that happen, but that's why they're dying, not from all the diseases we have.
You talk about in your documentary and the episodes about Food Lies. When do you think all this started?
Yeah, I try to trace it back. There's a lot going on in the last 100 years. I think it really started about 100 years ago when they started making the oils. They started doing Crisco and stuff like that, and started getting the processed oils, and sugar and flour became more part of our diet. But then I think the real lies started in the 50s. So people may know the story of Ansel Keys and the story of President Eisenhower having a heart attack. And this was in the 50s when we were eating a lot more processed foods, and they had TV dinners. They started inventing all these new highly processed foods, and everyone was using margarine and Crisco. And so for many years,
because
they were using,
it was healthier.
They said it was heart healthy. Avoid saturated fat. This new invention. It's great. We have Crisco. It's not your mother's dirty lard. They have all these advertising campaigns of why real fat was dirty and outdated. And you could use this newer technology, right? This is in the 50s and 60s, and everyone's like, oh, this is great. This is this great new technology. And also people were smoking too. All these people were smoking cigarettes everywhere. And so there was heart disease started really in a big way in the 50s. And there's a guy, Ansel Keys, that his idea was that it was because of saturated fat. And actually there's another guy named John Yudkin that people don't hear about, but he thought it was the refined grains and sugars and the industrial oils that were coming in, because he's from England, and he noticed that whenever the British would conquer an area over the years, they would bring in all these industrial ingredients, and then that's when they would start getting heart disease and diabetes or all the obesity, stuff like that. It's when those refined ingredients came in. So he was saying there was that, which is correct. It's very obvious. And then Ansel Keys was saying it was saturated fat, but without going into all the details, basically Ansel Keys won. And we kind of thought that saturated fat and cholesterol were the enemy. and that kind of changed the narrative. And then processed food companies started getting the green light to make all the processed foods that were low in fat, and so therefore they were supposed to be healthy.
So yeah, Ansel Key, it's in this community definitely vilified. There are people who defend him, though. There's a vegan doctor I've seen. You cannot, talking about Ansel Keys and the 7-country studies and all these things from the point of view that many nowadays know and talk about. It's like talking about his family and his parents, his mother and his father, which I don't understand. But are you familiar with the Minnesota coronary experiment?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you tell us a little bit summary about that.
Oh, well, I don't have the best summary. I know about it. There's 3 or 4 of these studies that were buried that kind of showed that saturated fat was not the problem, that people had better outcomes than with the seed oils. But maybe you'd be a better remind me about that.
So I've taken a little bit of a deep dive on a couple of the subjects that you mentioned. Canola oil, I have a book in the works. And the Minnesota coronary experiment, which I believe was conducted between 1968 and 1973. And it included, a robust cohort. Okay. It was sort of a randomized study, not really. And it was kind of open because people were eating either corn oil or animal fats. But at least it was a prospective, somewhat controlled cohort because this was when we had insane asylums and people with mental illnesses were institutionalized. So they had thousands of people on this study who voluntarily said, okay, I'll be in the corn oil group or in the continuing with the animal fats group. The main investigator researcher was Ansel Keys. Okay. After 5 years, I believe it lasted, the corn oil group lowered its cholesterol. Great, right? They also had more strokes than the animal fats group. Okay, so the study was buried, didn't get found until I think 2015 or something like that. And before it was buried and everything, Ansel Keys actually took his name off of anything related to that study. Anyways, and there are multiple studies, of course, that have shown similar situation where just because the oils may lower cholesterol, it doesn't mean they decrease cardiovascular events.
Exactly.
So
yeah, well, Nina Teicholz wrote the best book on this, I think. She did so much research. She spent over 9 years writing it, and it's called The Big Fat Surprise, and it has a lot of those studies in it. So yeah, I just don't I never remember all the details. I've been making this thing for so long too. It's, I'm on to other things. We've kind of done that part, but yeah, it's very interesting because it's just an insane narrative that the natural health, like foods that we've always eaten, are the cause of modern disease. It makes no sense. We've always eaten these foods, and the new foods that I mentioned earlier, refined grains, refined oils, and sugars. These are the new foods, and they came along with all the new diseases. It's like you don't need a study, but I mean, we could try. It's just hard to do these studies too these days, especially. Who's going to fund them?
I mean, the highest level of evidence will be a randomized double-blind control study. You cannot do that with diets, right? Because it's impossible. It will be unethical anyways. but it would be impossible to do to control both groups and then blindly.
Yeah.
But historically, we can look back and look at the evidence, right? You mentioned the past 100 years, seed oils, basically almost all of them have been around for just about that time.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them not even 50 probably. But around the turn of the century, you know, first 30 years, Crisco came, canola, not canola oil. Canola oil was finally marketed in the 1970s, but the story starts in the early 1900s. Uh, of course, I'm sure you know what it was used for before, right?
Machine
It,
lubricant, yeah.
it was a machine lubricant. So uh, I always joke sometimes when I see a patient, I tell them about it that you might as well go to the auto parts store and get a good synthetic motor oil. You're probably not doing yourself more harm than that. But so in the 1950s, the story of Ansel Keys probably took a turn, the history for the worse, in the 1970s with adopting the 1977 guidelines. Sometimes we talk about those guidelines about being the first. There have been food guidelines in the United States since forever.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the famous pyramid where they were recommending, I don't know what it was, 6 to 11 servings of basically starches, uh, grains, and when you plot the increase of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease over the years, you actually see very clearly in the late 1970s, early 1980s, an uptick
Mm-hmm.
of everything: all-cause mortality, diabetes, heart disease, and diabetes nowadays is really at pandemic levels. When you
Yeah.
take into account that almost every disease that's chronic disease nowadays, actually it is higher in diabetics, and all the metabolic dysfunction. Diabetes itself probably causes most deaths on the planet because number one cause of death is cardiovascular events. Number two is cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them are higher in diabetes, of course. Uh, and you can trace some of the, when you look at the history, everything started, yes, 100 years ago in the 1950s, and then the 1970s. You see, when you plot against, uh, these numbers on graphs, where the increase of incidence started or took off, I should say. Uh, and in the 1970s, when they were talking about these guidelines, what was the evidence that the scientists used to declare that this food pyramid was the right way to eat? Have you found out what the scientific evidence was that they used?
Um, I mean, I don't think they had any. I think they
Exactly.
it was about what we had available. We had a whole bunch of corn, wheat, and soy that was subsidized by the government and that we wanted to get rid of. And they thought that a calorie was a calorie. You know, they're just like, oh, well, all calories are the same. And they just, they actually, the original the original guidelines did have more meat and eggs and fresh produce. It was more, whole food based. And then I don't remember the exact story, but they said, oh, well, we can't pay for this. The government realized that they were going to have to pay for the SNAP the early version of SNAP was right for the lower income people. What was it called back then? I don't know. Do you know? It's just the subsidize, free food for the lower income people. And and it has to follow the recommendations. So if the recommendations were all this fresh meat and produce, they couldn't afford that. So they're like, okay, we need to, and also the lobbyists got involved, the corn, wheat, and soy lobbyists got
Of
involved,
course.
and then changed it to 6 to 11 servings. Yeah, it was like maybe like 3 to 5 servings of grains. And yeah.
We got a couple of questions. Let's go ahead and take some questions here. Number 1 Savage says, "Hola. Do you speak Spanish, Savage? My 80-year-old friend is being debilitated by Parkinson's syndrome. I know carnivore can't hurt, but can it help?" What do you think, Brian?
I think it can help. I don't study, all these individual diseases. I don't have a medical degree, and I don't give out nutrition advice to people because that's actually not legal for me to do. But I do know that there's some research about Parkinson's being partly a blood sugar problem. It's like Alzheimer's dementia we're understanding as type 3 diabetes, right? It's an insulin resistance in the brain, and that Parkinson's might be associated with that as well. Just that the brain can't get enough glucose because it's insulin resistant, or maybe there was something to do with autoimmune problems with Parkinson's, and that getting rid of all of plant foods would help a lot of people with autoimmune issues. So, yeah, what is your take on it?
All right. So, yeah, Savage is not my patient. I am a licensed physician, but he's not my my patient. You're not my patient. This is just my opinion. Yes, it can help, and I agree. I don't think it would hurt either. There are plenty of ongoing research. There's plenty anecdotes, and of course, the past few years we've had books by Dr. Christopher Palmer, psychiatrist, Dr. Georgia Eads, also psychiatrist, and even though the question is about Parkinson's, these are doctors who are talking about the brain and how it works and the problem. We can probably pinpoint things down to the mitochondria. Anything brain related, it seems to improve. And that's what I have several people with multiple sclerosis, for example, who have improved their symptoms. Are they cured? I don't know. But if they're not having any symptoms from a previous diagnosis and they're not using any medications and they're feeling great, that's pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these debilitating chronic degenerative diseases of the brain and the nervous system seem to improve. The mental diagnosis, they're all from the same brain, the same neurons, right? So all of them seem to improve. Will it help 100% of the people? I don't know. Okay. But I would say you got nothing to lose. Give it a try. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and see how you do. All righty. Ann Gables, great to hear from you, Brian. Always enjoy listening to you. When is your documentary ready to watch?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and We don't know that. So we have a production company now that's representing us. So it can move much faster, and they're helping us connect with basically like proven Hollywood producers and celebrities to then get it to Netflix. So that's the idea, is we want to get it on the biggest platform, which right now is Netflix, and make it free to watch. So the best way, yeah, to do that is to just take the extra time to make it really good, make it really fun, interesting to watch, and get it on Netflix. So that's where we're at. And we still have a lot more post-production to do. So it's going to be a little bit.
All righty. It is not easy, especially for the small independent
Yeah.
guys, right? Easy says, thoughts on omega-3 and omega-6 lab panels. Mine came back with linoleic acid of 0%, arachidonic acid of 19.4%, AA and EPA ratio of 4.7. Doc said this suggests risk of heart disease. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really. I mean, I don't really do like metabolic panels.
So the ratio of 4.7, I believe, is actually not that bad, but I don't know what the range for that lab is. So I wouldn't be able to give you a straight answer. I'll look into it.
Well, mainly in a higher level view is that the mainstream doctors, I'm guessing this doctor is just sort of in that mainstream mindset that this could be bad when it's probably probably good. It probably, if this person is eating more animal based and avoiding seed oils, then whatever the panels look like, if you're doing that, it's probably a lot better than was you were before.
All righty. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. QQQ in front of it, please. Can you tell us about other food lies? You know, the cholesterol issue, obviously, we talked about, but
yeah, the main food lies are, well, that meat is bad, that cholesterol is bad, that saturated fat is bad, right? Those are just the main ones. It's all the same narrative that really benefits processed food companies and the sick care system, and they really want to keep these afloat. Beyond that, stemming from that is kind of that, well, then whole grains must be good. Everyone's got to eat grains. Everyone's got to, avoid fat, use the seed oils. So that's tied in together. I think another big one, though, is just the calories in, calories out kind of thing, where if you look at food as just calories, which is what the mainstream does, then a lot of things are wrong, right? You end up making a lot of bad decisions. So of course there is some sort of energy balance going on, like you can't just eat unlimited food. Like you just eat like 100 sticks of butter and 100 pieces of bacon, and at some point you are going to gain weight. So there's something to it, but the big lie is that they have people thinking that all calories are the same, and that just benefits the food companies, really. And there's nutrient calories and there's energy calories. I like to split it up that way, where nutrient calories are very different from energy calories. So nutrient calories would be protein, vitamins, and minerals, and energy calories would be more fats and carbohydrates. Although there are, of course, fat-soluble vitamins in fats. So some fats, are beneficial, but if generally fat and carbs are like energy for your body, and the building blocks of your body are the protein, vitamins, and minerals, is what they needs every day. So I don't get why we're treating those as the same calories, right? One, important building, and one is, just getting you, powering you through the day, which is fine up until a certain extent. Most people are getting too much of these energy calories, and they're getting them from the same three ingredients we keep talking about: the refined grains, the sugars, and the seed oils. These are where they're getting all of these extra energy calories that have no nutrition in them and are causing all the problems.
So the calories in, calories out model cannot be thought of as an absolute. Uh, there are people who will argue, no, nothing else matters, just the amount of calories. I Also, it's a poor way of measuring the energy in food, but it's pretty much the only one we have right now, right? So most people understand, so we can talk, have a dialogue about calories. Everybody understands more or less. But if your calories are coming from ultra processed foods, refined carbohydrates, refined sugar, uh, refined fats, they're not going to be the same as if they're coming from uh, a meat or even vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
whole foods. But I always like to make this comparison because an Oreo cookie has 53 calories. An egg, most people agree, have about 70 calories. So the Oreo cookie must be better, right? It has a lower calorie content. So if I have a meal that is 10 Oreo cookies, I'll be having only 530 calories as opposed to having 10 eggs, which will be 700 calories. So kind of faulty logic, right?
Yeah.
Because the nutrition provided by the eggs has no equal, at least not compared to any cookie. So, you cannot be absolutist in thinking, oh, it's only about the calories. Calories, at the end of the day, the amount of food that you eat, it is important. If someone's trying to lose weight, probably they need to incorporate a decrease of the amount of energy they're consuming. Not necessarily the calories, but in general, the food.
The
And that
processed
includes.
energy. Well, yes, they need to decrease the processed energy. So there's the processed calories. So that's why, yeah, I hate with these people. They're just, oh, you just need a caloric deficit. No, you need a processed energy calorie deficit. So also like to tell people, you want all your nutrients for less calories, right? How do I get all the nutrients my body needs, all the protein, vitamin, and minerals my body needs for less energy calories? And how to do that is meat, eggs, fish, whole foods, produce on the side. That's how you do that. That, by definition, these whole foods have all that your body needs for less energy calories. Whole foods, by definition, do not have processed fats or processed carbs added into them. That's why they're good. They do not, all the foods that people are trying to make health claims on, really, it's funny that all these processed foods with all the health claims, oh, this box of cereal, it's heart healthy and all this, they're made up almost entirely of processed calories, processed energy. And that's the big food lie, right? That's the number two. There's really these two gigantic food lies. It's that they're scaring people away of animal foods by way of cholesterol, saturated fat, red meat. And they're telling you that all calories are the same. That leads you to boxes of cereal, granola bars that have low calories, people making decisions based on calories. It's just insane.
So uh, we were talking about the history a little bit before, and it's interesting to notice that we really have had an increase on the chronic degenerative diseases over the past, 50 to 100 years. And we can probably trace it back to food. And now red meat causes many of those problems, but we have been eating red meat for thousands of years. Okay, those who believe in absolute evolution will tell you millions of years, right? And just over the last 100 years, it has now started to cause cancer, diabetes, heart attacks. Doesn't make doesn't make much sense when you take a look at the meat and the food that we eat that way. Lexi, how are you doing? I am glad you're doing better. Let me preface this with Lexi had been pretty strict, improved a lot of her symptoms from multiple mental illnesses, and then kind of went off plan a little bit. She was feeling better, went off plan, and they returned with a vengeance. So she's making the comment, my psychotic symptoms have reduced again by about 80%, and confidence has skyrocketed since getting back on keto a couple of weeks ago. Congratulations, Lexus. Uh, just look forward, be consistent, and you know what helps. We all have our temptations and our struggles, right? Uh, so I am very, very glad that you are doing better. Brian, what do you think about? I mentioned Dr. Christopher Palmer, Georgia E., the psychiatrist. What do you think about food improving mental health to the degree that sometimes you can see? This is an example, Lex is here.
Yeah. Oh, big fans of them. Both of them are friends of mine. Seen them a lot over the years at different conferences and really respect their work. I am huge into this. I've seen it in a lot of people. I've seen people I know personally, even my sister has had great improvements in her mental health from eating this way, eating lower carb, eating, getting rid of processed foods. I think she's, done full on keto before and had great benefits. I think it's incredible. I mean, I love that. Actually, there's great donor, Jan, but I forget her last name, Buzinski or something.
Basuki?
Bazuki, that's uh, donated $50 million to research this exact stuff, mental health, specifically with some of these doctors that will be doing the studies. Dr. Palmer's involved. Yeah,
I believe their son had a severe case of bipolar
yep.
illness and basically is pretty much on no medications now, just diet.
Well,
And
I had a phone call with her a couple years ago, actually, and she said they have all the money in the world. The husband started Roblox, so they have billion. You can look them up. I think I googled them once. It was $5 billion or something. And with all the money in the world, all the doctors, they could not solve these problems. The son and the bipolar, they did everything, and then they found keto, and it's just gone. It's just he was better, and it's just amazing.
so I'm sure doing what you do, especially the past several years, and the story uh, you told us about after your parents passed, you have seen these anecdotes, right? Because many times one of the criticisms is, well, those are anecdotes, it doesn't prove anything. But you keep hearing the anecdote, right? You keep hearing the bipolar, the schizophrenia, the hallucinations, and the metabolic diseases, all of them, autoimmune diseases improving. Is it still amazing to you every time that you hear a new anecdote?
It really is because, I do a lot of social media, so I don't get to see it directly a lot. And then when I hear about it, people will DM me or even like this comments on, you say, a live stream. It, like, every time it's inspiring, and yeah, it just reminds me that it's possible, because it's hard to group these things into a study. It's just, yeah, that's what they say. It's just anecdotes, but I wish there was a better way to group all of these things into, well, I guess some people are trying to do retrospective studies with this.
Well, I think nowadays with social media, and this has been a real game changer, I think, uh, for as many bad things that you can attribute to social media. Uh, the little person, the single one anecdote can start telling their story. And if we all do that, we all put some effort into it, we make it explode. And I think that has been one of the factors in carnivore and ketogenic diets being popular at the moment. Now, the keto diets, Atkins diet, you go back, I'm old enough to remember the 70s and the 60s, unfortunately,
Mhm.
as well. And throughout the years, the Atkins diet has its ups and downs and ups and downs. And now it's again up, but now is the carnivore diet as well, which is a ketogenic diet. And I think with social media now, where the person who might not be a health professional, who might not have any degrees of any kind, but has a story to tell, can get on and say, hey, this happened to me. And I see it's been happening to these other people. So uh, spread the message. If you have a story to tell, or you have a project or a reason to do, like Brian, uh, go ahead and do it. It's not difficult nowadays to at least basically you're standing in the corner and telling your story, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. So here, another story. Now, of course, this is one of the oldest uh, things that we knew about on a ketogenic diet. Uh, Bruce says 60 plus days seizure free for the first time in 20 years. And the other day, Bruce, in our community, shared a little bit of his history. I've been placed on just about every other epilepsy drug twice over, and nothing helped until this carnivore lifestyle. What do you think, Brian?
Oh yeah, I've heard so much about this. Yeah, I think that's when they discovered the ketogenic diet was for epilepsy. And there's a great movie made by the Charlie Foundation. What's the director's name? Do you remember? Or the producer guy, Jim? He's a Hollywood producer, and his son Charlie had epilepsy, and he found out he was waiting in the hospital and found this old book about that they would prescribe the keto diet for epilepsy. And he's like, what's the deal? Why is no one talking about this? And really found out it was just because they got some drugs that weren't as effective yet could be profited on. So they just didn't use it anymore. But yeah, epilepsy, I've heard a lot of great success stories. And
It was the treatment of choice because it was the only treatment available until medications. You're right, until medications came into the market, and now you could just write a prescription, and a company was selling the prescription. Uh, we can certainly talk about money a lot, uh, but yeah, ketogenic diet was the treatment of choice until about 100 years ago. Medications for epilepsy were discovered. I can't remember right now which one was the first, but prior to that, a ketogenic diet was always used. I deal a lot with diabetes, type 2, type 1, and there are references to what seems to be diabetes as far back as 4,500 years ago. Well, 4,500 years ago, and since then, we haven't had insulin. We didn't know about insulin, first of all. We haven't had insulin until about 100 years ago. So, all the cases of type, which I believe there were most likely type 1 diabetes, because if you were old and type 2 usually doesn't present with serious symptoms, they were probably not even diagnosed and the incidence was not as much. But the type 1 diabetics, once they developed diabetes, it was almost a death sentence. And forever and ever, the treatment has been pretty much an all meat diet, because they realize if they eliminate most, if not all, the plants from the diet, people live longer. So, but nowadays there are medications, there is insulin, there are pills, and you hardly can go to a doctor nowadays and they don't talk to you about diet. They, oh, lose weight, move more, lose weight, you'll be fine. Here's a pill. And I've been with a patient going to a doctor as I was the companion, and I had another doctor who was a little bit older than me telling the person, oh, yeah, hemoglobin A1C 7.2, you're doing great, that's fine. I personally sort of panic when you're even in the pre-diabetic range, because you're already having complications. If you have more than 5.6, 5.7 of A1C, you're starting to have complications way before you're diagnosed with diabetes. And some people die of complications before they are ever diagnosed with diabetes, but they are dying of the complications of that blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So, congratulations, Bruce. Keep up the good work. Yeah, congratulations. Uh, if I missed a question, let me know. Just put it up again, please. Let's take this. Let's see. Target prime rib. That's Tom. Today, my neighbor just argued with me. Is seed oils are only bad if they aren't changed out, or they're only bad if they're not changed out. I just smiled and nod. Hate to say, but you can change stupid. This is
Yeah.
an interesting topic, right? The seed oils.
Yeah. There's a lot going on here. It's funny that there's pro seed oil influencers out there that are just, I don't know. They're just, I call them useful idiots sometimes, right? Without knowing it, they're just going along with these agendas and narratives that just help keep the system profitable for certain people. That I think the point here, yes, I mean, seed oils are always bad, right? They're highly processed. It's an insane processing steps, all these different solvents, all these problems with it. That's the wrong ratio of fatty acids that the humans aren't used to. It's they oxidize in our bodies. They're unnatural. There's many other reasons why they're bad. But then also, I think this neighbor is talking about they're extra bad when they're in the fryer. So I think it's interesting. At least they understand that part. That
Well,
they're
his
extra
neighbor
bad.
says they're only bad
No, I know
Uh,
exactly.
uh,
So that's what I'm saying. It's like the point is they're always bad, but
yes.
I at least think it's great that the neighbor at least knows that they're extra bad when they're used over and over and they get more and more oxidized and they become worse and worse for people when they're kept in the fryer for days. And yeah, this is how, again, it's always about money, right? They're using the cheapest oils in the fryers, and to save even more money, they can just keep reusing them. And they actually have all these little devices that can skim off the bits of food and try to strain it out a little so that they can keep using the oil for weeks.
Yeah. Uh, Canola oil, like I said, is very interesting. The story is not dissimilar from others, the Crisco and the cottonseed uh, oil and all that, but the rapeseed, RAPE seed, that is the seed where they get the canola oil, normally produces, up until the 1970s, the oil produced, extracted from those seeds, had a high amount of a fatty acid called euceric acid. And I always mess up the name, but I believe I got it right this time. The acid is about 52% of the oil. Well, that acid is cardiotoxic. So if humans consume it, it's going to damage their heart. So it took them up until the 1970s through breeding technique, which is the old way of doing genetic manipulation, was crossbreeding and all these breeding techniques, right? Until we found out, okay, there is actually DNA I can manipulate. But it wasn't until the 70s that they were able to produce a seed that only had 2% of that cardiotoxic oil. So the government, in all its wisdom, allows up to 2% of a cardiotoxic substance in your canola oil. Okay. In addition to that, all the processing that you mentioned, these oils are heated extremely, extremely heated. And they're, by the time they get to your hands, they have been already rancid, but they have processed them to take that flavor away. So it's already a bad oil when once you take that bottle home with a heart healthy seal, right? Because most of them have actually been proven. I give them that they've been proven to lower cholesterol, but lowering cholesterol is not the whole story. Like the study I talked about, the Minnesota coronary experiment. Uh, So in my mind, that there are all bad oils. There are some even researchers and medical doctors that will promote the good effects of all these seed oils. Uh, all right. Let me see if we have. Well, all this oil, like Tony makes a comment. Hi, Tony. Seed oils are used in creating many ultra processed foods. I used to walk around with my white coat when was seeing patients from room to room. I had a granola bar, a healthy granola bar, a very well known brand of a granola bar. And I did it because the first 7 ingredients, 5 of them turn into sugar, whether it was sugar or by any other name. And then one of them was canola oil, and the other one was salt. Out of the first 7 ingredients, maybe the salt is good, uh, but yes, all these oils are used for basically ultra processed food is by almost definition anything that's refined sugar and refined oils, which you rarely find what you would consider an ultra processed food. Things that come in a box, a bag, or a can. Most of the time, will have one of these oils. More canola, soybean, corn, probably being among the most common.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the main reasons processed foods are bad, and really it just adds zero nutrients. Part of the problems, there's so many problems with seed oils, but one of the problems is they don't have things like the fat soluble vitamins in the fat like butter does or natural oils do, so that your body can help just process them. And there's the antioxidants in vitamin E. If you're eating fish, people are like, oh well, fish has polyunsaturated fats, right? And that's bad because seed oils have high polyunsaturated fats. Like, no, fish is a whole food and it has all these other nutrients in it that help protect you against those unstable polyunsaturated fats. And they're not the same polyunsaturated fats. They're whole food versions. They're not highly processed and altered.
So I know you were asked before. You mentioned you're still dealing, but so what's the timeline expected to be for the
Oh, for
documentary
the
to?
series. If I had to guess, I mean, it's definitely just next year, right? The year's sadly already coming to an end. It's going to be holiday season pretty soon. I know we're never going to finish before the end of the year. I think in the spring that if we're lucky, if Netflix buys it, I think they will, then they will help us fund finishing it. And with that money, we can go quick. And I just want to get it out because time is of the essence. The sooner people see this, the sooner they can change their diet.
Have you met the people from Healing Humanity?
I think I did go to a dinner with them. Yeah.
Okay. Their documentary probably finally coming out next year as well.
It's great. There's been a couple. It's hard though. There's Sacred Cow that maybe more regenerative ag than health, but they couldn't get on Netflix. They couldn't make a deal. There's just a lot of great content out there that hasn't been seen by the mainstream. So it's hard to do. I'll tell you that. It's hard just to make a documentary in general, but it's even harder to get it on a mainstream platform.
All right, so we are almost at the top of the hour. Where can people find you?
Yeah, Food Lies. Search on Facebook, Instagram, x.com, YouTube. You can search Food Lies on any of those and you'll find me. And so that's the best way you can follow along. I do other things like Nose to Tail, where I make quality products that like beef tallow body care, and we actually make oyster pills. I don't like supplements in general. I think there's a place for supplements to help people get back to even if they're really low on things. But I think oysters are really powerful. So I've put just pure oysters into a pill. So I'm really happy with that. It actually raised my testosterone a lot. I started taking them. It has a lot of zinc. And you would know as a doctor, zinc's really important in the hormone, especially testosterone building pathways. And it has all these cofactors, a lot of stuff people are missing. So I got that at Nose to Tail. And that's it. Yeah.
All right. Do you get into much conversations on X, arguments?
Not too much. I try not to. In my first probably 4 or 5 years of doing this, I would get into a lot of arguments and vegans would come at me and all this stuff. And then in the last, say, 3 years, I just don't care about them anymore. I just stay out of it. I've got other things to do. I don't really do that anymore. But It's funny though. I think it's funny. They're just helping my posts get more popular. If they comment on them, it just raises them in the algorithm.
All right. So thank you very much for being here, Brian. Thank you, everybody that's here. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., our usual time with Dr. Kills, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. And on Thursday, I'm again here at 3 p.m. Where I believe, I don't know if it's at 3 p.m. I have Katie, and in the community, those who signed up for the higher tier of the Kilsmani tribe, we are going to have Jenny Medich. So thank you for being here. You have a great day and eat meat.
I like it.